Okay.
Susan Iannucci.
I'm going to reiterate the thing here. If you have a question, please make sure to type in large caps the word question, or I won't see it. I'll assume you're chatting amongst yourselves. And I know there'll be lots of questions, especially towards the end of the call. And then that's the big thing. We're all dying. We are honored to have an Audie nominated audiobook narrator,
Wow.
Helen Lloyd, with us today. Very excited. Cannot wait. And Helen, could you please, because I'm just going to say it's about penguins, could you please say the name of the book again?
Penguins, yes. Yes, it's a wonderful book. It's called, well, it's got two names, but in America it's called, I'll tell you the funny story about it. It's called How the Penguins Saved Veronica, published by Penguin Random House in America. In the UK, it's called Away with the Penguins and has a completely different narrator, despite the fact that it's a British author and I'm British. A completely different team recording it. So I recorded it for Penguin Random House US, and somebody else recorded it for Penguin Random House UK, which is very bizarre. But I don't care because I got Audie nominated and they didn't.
Was it fiction?
That sounds really bitchy.
Is it fiction or is it nonfiction?
It's fiction. It's a wonderful story. It's the story of a crotchety, bad-tempered, curmudgeonly 80-year-old, so typecasting, who is a real grotty. She's a really kind of landed gentry, very wealthy, very, very sort of dismissive of everybody, who discovers that she's had a sad life. She's had a very lonely life, but she discovers that she has a grandson. And the grandson turns out to be a pot-smoking, a bit of a kind of pot-smoking rough heel. So she says, I don't want anything to do with you. You're not my sort of person. Go away. I don't want anything to do with you at all. But then she decides she wants something else to fill the hole in her life, that because her grandson has gone. And she sees a documentary about Adelie penguins. So she gets on a boat and she goes to Antarctica to meet the penguins. And she falls in love with a baby penguin, and she christens it Patrick after her grandson. Oh. And she basically rescues this orphaned penguin and puts it to bed in her cashmere sweater in her room. And she takes on all these scientists who are saying, you know, you're an 80-year-old woman, for God's sake. You cannot go wandering around the tundra looking for penguins. And she says, well, yes, I can. Of course I can. I'm bloody stupid. Of course I can if I want to. So she does. And then Patrick, the grandson, becomes a kind of reformed character and comes to Antarctica to rescue her, and they get reunited because she's left him her diaries that she wrote when she was a 20-year-old. So I had to then be her as a 20-year-old writing these letters, the love letters, to Patrick's father, who we never meet. So I go from 20-year-old writing love letters to 86-year-old fondling a penguin. So it was a wonderful role. It was an absolutely fantastic role. It's a beautiful book. And I mean, even if you don't want to listen to the audiobook, it's worth a read. It had me. The trouble was I sobbed through so much of it that they had to keep going for me because I'm sorry, I can't read this. I can't do this bit because I'm crying too much. You just have to give me 5 minutes. It was very funny. And I literally sobbed.
Do you find that it colors your life? Do you find that when you're doing a book like that,
that one is one of those books that I've, since I narrated it, which is 9, 10, 11 months ago, I've actually reread it as a book because I loved it so much. It's just the most beautiful book. It really is lovely. It's written by a lady called Hazel Pryor.
I can so see it. I'm sorry, but can't you just see it coming out on BBC for Christmas?
Oh, it would make the most wonderful film. It would.
And you could play it, except you don't look close to 80. They'd have to put serious makeup on.
I think it would be. I think Maggie Smith. I would cast Maggie Smith. I think.
That'd be brilliant.
It's wonderful. It really is a fabulous book, and that's the. I mean, it's actually, you know, when you've got a book like that, you kind of can't go wrong, because it's just it's so beautifully written. husband's waving at me.
But you bring that up, and right there, I think you've touched on the bet, in my opinion, because I don't know. I think, how many narrators do you know that we grew up losing ourselves in books? And when you get older, you can read a book and enjoy it, but it's much harder to lose yourself because life and bitterness and health. But when you narrate a book, we all have those books that you don't look back at times of your life, you look back at books. Oh, that was when you know what I mean? It colors whatever 2 weeks you're working on it. It changes us.
But I think one of the things that I've always tried to do, and it is hard, but I have always tried to do it, is to say, if I don't, really worked hard at trying to do books that I really want to do. And of course, there are going to always be books that you don't want to do. But I'm in a very lucky position. I don't have kids at home. I haven't got a mortgage. I've done all that. I've paid all that lot off. I've brought the kids off and they've gone. So I'm in a very lucky position that I'm not financially... yes, and what I earn I need, because I have no other source of income. I have a pension, but it's... I fell foul of Equitable Life. So I'm one of those lucky people that lost my pension when the banks went bust.
Helen.
So I lost my personal pension. I have a state pension, but that's, it's minimal. And my personal pension collapsed, so I didn't get any of that. So I need some money, but I can be picky. And I've always said, if I don't like the book, and it's not a book that I would... of course, there are books that I've done that I wouldn't, pick off a library shelf. But I think they've all been really well written, and I've always been very picky about that. And for me, that's paid off, because as I've progressed, I now get offered better and better books. So I'm getting now fewer books that I'm thinking, oh God, do I really want to do this one? And that was a choice that I made early on, and I know that I'm really lucky to be in that position to be able to do it. But I think no matter what level you're working at, on how you're working, and who you're working for, if you see a book that you think, this is real rubbish, this is appallingly badly written, it's just crap, if you can possibly afford not to do it, don't do it, because it will haunt you. It will be there, and it's there on your profile, and it won't go away. And people look. It's one of the reasons why I always say, if you're on ACX, don't do short pamphlets. Don't do books that are less than 5 or 6 hours, just because you think, okay, I can build my portfolio. I can do 100 of these books. They're only an hour, 2 hours long. A publisher will look at those books on your portfolio and go, all the books they've done are under 4 hours. Can't possibly think of casting them for a book that's 10 hours long. They may not be able to sustain it. So, set your goals and say, this is where I want to be, and think of every book that you accept as being a contributory factor to that goal.
And do you not
if you
think...
want to do other stuff, do it under a pseudonym.
Yeah, so it's not sticking to
the crap. Do it as or the erotica, or the stuff that your mother or your kids, you don't want them to hear. Use a pseudonym. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Quality, because I learned a lesson a while ago. You obviously check for editing errors and everything, and I've always known better than to take the really obviously rubbish ones, but under my real name. But do you not find, somebody mentioned, I was talking about public domain books a few weeks ago, and they were like, oh, it's a lot of oldie, I think it would be too dense and it would be too hard. But then what I noticed was, I've taken some books on for the money. They're good books. There's nothing wrong with them. I've checked the editing. They have good reviews, but the language doesn't flow for me, and my brain doesn't register, and my interest isn't. It's what you said about, I think that's the key element. The way you describe the books you do, you're in the position that you can afford to love the work while you're doing it, and it comes out in your work.
But
Whereas
I
when
do
you're doing a
public
book for
domain
money,
stuff.
you're not loving it
No,
always.
but
You're
I
doing
do
your
public
best.
domain stuff
You what?
because I will do public domain stuff. I work with Spoken Realms and do stuff on Spoken Realms. And I see you've got Stephen on Thursday.
Yes,
Um,
yes. And
so
they're
I do,
so well written. Don't you find
yeah,
that it doesn't
because they're
matter the
so exactly.
language?
And nobody is going to cast me, even with, my years of experience in all sorts of things, nobody is going to cast me to do Virginia Woolf because they want, I don't know, what's her name? Who does Virginia Woolf all the time? Uh,
Don't know. Don't know.
Juliet Stevenson.
Ah,
Juliet Stevenson is who they want for Virginia Woolf. So I love Virginia Woolf. I absolutely love them. So I've done Jacob's Room and I'm now doing Mrs. Dalloway because it's just come into the public domain. And I will be one of half a dozen people who's done Mrs.
yeah.
Dalloway, but it's the only way I will get to do it.
And
And I
it's
don't,
not the point,
I
is
just
it?
love the book.
Yeah, the point is do it's the only time, do you not think, you could do it for the pure love of, except from what you're saying, you've curated a career where you're doing your actual, that's the holy grail, Helen.
Yeah.
You're doing the
But
Penguin book for the love of it.
yes. But nobody's going to do, nobody's going to, I mean, not that I would do Pride and Prejudice, because there's 75,000 other versions of Pride and Prejudice, and that's probably about 6 too many. But, there are lots and lots of public domain books that I would love to do. And Spoken Realms gives you the way to do them. And I've had 2. I've got the Map and Lucia books that I've been doing for 4 years. And I keep putting the date back because I haven't got time to do them. Because other stuff comes in. But Stephen's okay with that. And, I'll get them done one day. The trouble is I have to keep restarting because I've done chapter 1 to 6. And then there's a 3-year gap. And then I forget I can't do it. I've got to start again.
Yeah.
Because I've changed the way I narrate in 4 years. Definitely.
Scarlet Letter. I've got the cover made. It's my book, but finding time is the hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but do you not think if you were doing the Penguin book,
Yeah.
and you didn't love it as much, do you think just on the strength of the book, it would be up
Yeah.
for an award, or do you think your
Yeah.
love of the
Yeah.
book was an
No,
important
I
element?
think it's it's one of those, it was exactly the right book at exactly the right time because it came out just at the beginning of the year, just as COVID was striking, and everybody was beginning to feel very miserable and locked in and down and, enclosed and it's a real, I mean, it has no depth really. It's a light read. There's a lot of stuff about, I learned an awful lot about global warming and conservation along the way, but that isn't what the book is about. It's about the way a woman finds her way to find herself and a softer side of herself and recognizes that she's actually making herself miserable by being the way she is. So it's a learning journey for her. So it was a perfect timing for that book to
Yeah,
come out
because you don't
this
want
year.
too much depth
You
right now.
don't
There's
want
so much
heavyweights.
out there.
No, exactly. So it was, I think, yes, it's a beautifully written book, but coincidentally, it was just perfectly timed for everybody wanting something to brighten their day, make them feel better, to give them a bit of happiness and light and sweetness. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. I mean, actually, Hazel Pryor, she's a new author. It's only her second book. Her first one is called Ellie and the Harp Maker, which I'm reading at the moment, which is equally good, completely different. She's a very, very talented young writer, but it's only her second book. So it's not like she's a well-known author at all. But she got one of the Costa, and she was on the Richard and Judy read list. So it's not a heavyweight book at all.
Yeah.
It's quite a lightweight book, but it's it's a beautiful book. It's lovely. I really, really enjoyed it.
I love that. That's one of those books that stands the test of time.
I think it will, yes. I think it will.
Yeah.
It's a bit sentimental and it's a bit sort of, there are certain plot things and you go, really? how credible, how really are you sure that this is going to happen? But life is full of
Yeah.
coincidences and oddities and
But all
things
the
like,
books that we remember, I mean, okay, not
oh,
children's
absolutely.
books, The Secret Garden.
Yeah,
Really?
absolutely. Yes.
But
Yeah.
that like formed my entire life. I mean,
Yes.
Wuthering Heights, greatest love story on earth.
Yeah.
Seriously, you want to murder those two characters. They're so
Yeah.
obnoxious.
Yeah.
But
But there's something about books that, I mean, I've probably got 7 books on my bedside table on the go at any one time. I read for at least an hour before I go to sleep every night. At the moment, um, I'm reading another Virginia Woolf that isn't out of copyright for another 6 years, so I shan't be recording that one for a while. But I'm reading that for pleasure. Um, I've got a science fiction on the go. I've got a thriller on the go. I've got a historical book about Napoleon on the go, um, and I generally have a Bill Bryden lurking around as well because I think he's wonderful. So all of those are on my bedside table. I've got a Kindle with about 600 books on, and I dot in and out and I read every single night. And that's not prepping, that's pleasure. And I have done I think every night of my life. When I was a kid, I used to go to the library 3 times a week and I'd take 4 books out at a time and just read and read and read. I devour books and I always have done. So for me, audiobook narration was a completely natural place to look for because reading is such a pleasure to me. It's something I love doing.
something you said to me when I first met you properly. I mean, I met you through B and everything, but like when we had our first conversation, and I've realized something that you seem to have attained that I'm working really, really hard to get to. I'm not there. But some of the most successful people I've had on the call have all reached this. Remember when you told me about the books that you first started booking and how you had an avatar as your picture
Yeah.
and how who was it that convinced you to put a different picture up?
Sean.
Sean.
Sean Pratt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was, because I hated, well, I hate having my photograph taken for a start. I always have done. I've loathed it. I think it's horrible. But also I had this kind of weird, it was almost like snobism. And I know that sounds weird, but it was kind of, it's my voice. That's what you're hiring me for. You're hiring me for what I sound like. What the hell does it matter what I look like? It's completely unimportant. And if you see me, then that will colour the way you cast me. So I had this ridiculous avatar where I was kind of pale pink, and it was a photograph, a sort of 20-year out-of-date photograph that I then tweaked. And I used that for years and years and years, and I have to say, I got a much broader range of books than I do now, because people would cast me in things like romance, which I do very little of now, because they didn't know how old I was. And if I want to sound like a 30-year-old, I can sound like a 30-year-old. But the face doesn't fit that. So, but Sean said to me, you sound like you look. And there are lots and lots of 30-year-olds wanting to do romance. There are fewer year-olds able to do the more mature roles. Why don't you nail that market and show people who you are? And I did. And it completely switched the kind of books I got offered.
But
Totally.
right
Right,
there, because we
literally,
touched on
almost
this in the
overnight.
first call, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it isn't age. I mean, I know that that's where you were mentally when you switched it and everything.
Yeah.
But what I hear when I look at you and when I talk to you, because ironically, you seem to be getting weirdly younger every time I see you. And as I said, you're doing very,
Should go to Specsavers, dear. I'm sure it's lack of these that's making that look.
I think because somebody made a comment on one of the social media pages that they were going to be aging out pretty soon anyway. And I felt my initial reaction was, excuse me, I'm an actress. There are old people to be played, and when I'm 90, I'm going to be playing those 90-year-olds and the rest. and I will edit this part out in case people take it the wrong way, but the older I get, it'll just mean that my competition will kind of
Oh, no,
die
no,
off.
don't edit it out. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's
And,
absolutely true.
but it's not the age that I'm seeing. And I think this book that you're doing is the evidence. It's stepping into your own shoes completely unapologetically. This is me. It's everything you say goes right to that. I'm not taking on books that I don't like. I mean, we have our reasons because I don't need to, because etc. But what it's coming down to, think about the theme. I'm not taking on books that I don't like. When I do like it, I make sure it's what you said in the last call. I make sure I'm in the moment. I'm enjoying it. I do it my way. I'm who I am. I'm not playing by your rules anymore. You're
Yeah,
you're like yourself. Like,
but that sounds incredibly arrogant, though, and I think
it doesn't. It sounds
that's a
brave. I think
really
it sounds
difficult
brave.
position to take when you're starting out, when you haven't got 50 years behind you. Remember, but Daniela, I graduated from drama school before most people here were born.
But
You know,
do
I've
you
been
not
doing
think
this.
people
I've been
starting?
in this business for 52 years,
Yeah.
53 years this September, and
So
that's
you
a
earned the
long time
stripes.
to get your to go. I have enough confidence that what I do is as good as, and when I say as good as, I mean technically as well, because if you're worried about the technical side of your work, if you're not getting the tech stuff right, then you'll never ever be able to step into your shoes as an actor ever. If you're worried, it's like if you're on a stage and you're worried about tripping over the carpet or dropping the props or not knowing your lines, then you can't perform. And if you're an audiobook narrator, if you're going, oh God, is this software going to start clicking? Is my microphone going to pick up this? Can they hear next door's dogs barking?
Okay, so you can't
Am
embrace the
I?
confidence in
Yeah,
the beginning.
you
You
have
have to earn it.
you have to get all of that out of the way so
Mm.
that you're doing punch and roll, you're doing all of that sort of stuff completely automatically. You're not worrying about it. You know where to drop your cursor in. You know where to do your pickup. You know where to take your breaths. You know how to, if you're doing self stuff, you know what your processing is post production. You know how to edit your audio. You've got a proofer that you're working with. And I never, ever, ever proof my own audio, ever. Right from the very beginning, I've hired somebody to proof it because you can't proof your own audio.
Because if you
You
think
just can't.
fiery, my first mistake, I
Go on.
thought it was fiery. I taught myself that word when I was like 5 reading
Yeah,
books. So if you think it's obviously I said it because I think it.
yeah.
You need
Yeah,
an
you need
outside.
somebody else. But
Yeah.
it's also because you get, if you've corrected, if what you tend to do when you read is if you see something in front of you that doesn't quite fit the way you would say it, and
Yeah.
this happens particularly if you're reading a book, if I'm reading a book set in the UK written by an American author, it will be different from a book set in the UK written by Brit. Just is. The syntax, everything is different. So what I tend to do with that is I will correct it. I will auto-correct it in my head to say it the way I would say it. So I have to make myself say, he walked toward it. Or they looked out the window, because I would always say he looked out of the window, or they walked towards it, and they went further and further, not farther and farther, which is what they say in the States. So you tend to auto-correct all that, and when you proof it, if you try to proof it yourself, you still auto-correct it, so you don't pick up the mistakes. So I've always hired a proofer. But if the techie stuff is getting in your way, then you cannot be in that moment that is where you need to be when you're narrating.
Yeah. And health. That's where I fall down. If you're
And
vocal,
health. And
if
health.
you're
Yeah.
congested or you're not well,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. But so the key it keeps coming back to working on your craft. But I still
Yeah.
see an impetus with so many people coming into the market that, because it's, what is it, three-legged. There's your craft, there's your further education, and then there's the marketing, the networking. And I feel that people think that the networking is more important than the
No,
narrating.
I absolutely agree.
I think more and more
Huge
it's
problem.
become the
Yeah,
networking more than they think that's their ticket to
yeah,
success. But I
yeah,
feel like it's hard work, isn't it?
yeah.
You're right. You don't just step into your, I want, you have actually, I want to be able to just like fearlessly, like, I'm me, this is me. I'm not quite there, but you're right. You have to work
Yeah,
to
you
get to
do.
that
But
point.
and I mean, it doesn't always work. Sometimes you you know, I'm not saying you make enemies exactly, but it's very easy to for people to misunderstand that and see it as arrogance. And you need a broad back in this business. You know, you need to be able to take rejection. I can't tell you how many books, certainly in the early days, that I auditioned for that I didn't get, and still audition for stuff and don't get. I'm far from being too grand to say, I'm sorry, I don't audition, darlings. Just send me the script, and if I like
I
it, I'll
love
do it. None of
auditioning.
that. You know, I do audition and I don't always get the job. But one of the most important things I think to remember when that happens is that authors, publishers, casting directors, producers don't always know exactly what they want to hear. They have a sort of voice in their head, but they don't exactly know what that voice is. Now, sometimes you will hit it and they will hear you and they'll go, yep, that's it. That's the voice I've been looking for. When that happens, you're off and you're on a roll. But if you, however good you are, if you are not the voice they hear in in their head, I mean, if they hear somebody with a very deep voice, a very high voice, or a voice that is much flatter and more direct than mine, it doesn't matter how good my read is because I am not matching their preconception. So when you're turned down for anything, you know, it's like when you're an actor. 9 times out of 10, you're being turned down because you're the wrong size, you're the wrong shape, your hair's the wrong colour, you're too fat, you're too thin, you're too young, too old, you've got long hair, you've got short hair, you've got dark hair, you're blonde, whatever it happens to be, your eyes are the wrong colour. I
I
had a
got a
director.
part. I got a part because they got rid of the girl before me because they said she was too pretty. Take this one instead.
There you go. I had somebody telling me, darling, you can't possibly do tragedy, you've got short hair. Be that one. You know, it didn't matter that the plays we were doing were Merchant of Venice, where Portia spends 95% of the play being a boy, and Brecht's Antigone, where Antigone gets her head shaved at the beginning of the first act. So, you know, having short hair, the actress with the long hair had to wear a wig for both roles. But that was the director's preconception, was
Because we're
women
dealing in a world of perception.
could only do comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. We're dealing in a world of perception, aren't we? And I mean,
Indeed.
no more so than people,
So,
even
so
if they
you know,
can't see you.
if you don't get the books you go for, there's one of two reasons. You're not matching their perception, or maybe you're going for the wrong sort of books. You
Or
have to
maybe
know,
you're not at that point yet and you need
or
to
maybe you're
fix
not
your
at that
tech
point yet.
or
Absolutely, yeah. But you have to know your strengths, and playing to your strengths, whatever those strengths are, will stand you in better stead than saying, well, there's millions of people doing romance, why can't I? Why would
it
you
is
if you're
so
great at something
tempting.
else?
It is so tempting because
And the other thing is that people use auditions, and there are a lot of, I hear this all the time. There was a post, there was a thread going through on a Facebook feed last week with somebody posting, I did 96 auditions this week, and the network is going, wow, yeah, knock it into the park, or whatever the phrase is. That's just wasting your time. I'm sorry. If you're doing 96 auditions, A, when are you working? You're not. And you were just wasting your time, because out of those 96 auditions, you might only be right for 3 of the jobs. And if you're not, what's the point of doing it? So, you know, don't practice. Don't use auditions for practice. Practice in order to be able to do auditions.
when I started, I used to use them as
Silence.
my warm up, but knowing I wouldn't get them. But I don't think I would ever use it if I really wanted the book as a warm up. If you really want the book, you like, what do you
No,
think
you
of
mustn't ever
perfectionism?
do that. If you want to do warm-ups, grab a newspaper article, grab a book and read it. But you have only one chance, Daniela.
Yeah,
Everybody only has one
you're
chance
right.
in front of that casting director or that producer. So if you're using an audition as a warm-up and
You're
they
right.
go, my God, that was absolutely awful, because you haven't been concentrating, you're just doing it as a vocal
Yeah,
warm-up, they will remember the next time a book comes up that you really want to do, they'll go, no, no, that was the woman that read it like, as if she couldn't care less. Don't ever do
you're right.
audition
You're
warm-ups.
right.
Don't
But
ever
see,
do that.
it's a change in mindset because I used to think of it as a numbers game when I
Yeah.
was and also and even today because I know what I like and I know what I'm good at because the minute it comes up I run to it. But the romance thing, because you're influenced by it online because it
Yeah.
seems like all the work is romance because that's where the most of the social media thing follows.
And also, if you're on royalty share, you know that romance sells better than almost any other genre. So
Yeah.
if you want to make easy money, essentially, by doing royalty share stuff. I mean, I know romance narrators that will not work per finished hour because they earn so much more on royalty share.
Yeah.
They're earning thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on royalty share,
I really
far
like
more than
someone
they
to
ever
be
would on
killed in the
PFH.
beginning of my books.
Say
I
that
like
again.
I really like someone to be killed in the beginning of my books. I
Yes,
like
that's quite good. I found something out the other day. I did it as an experiment. I was doing a whodunit. I was doing a thriller, and I made an absolute decision that I wouldn't read the end of the book because I didn't want
ooh,
to know who did it. So
ooh.
I read the whole of the first, all bar the last three chapters. So I didn't know who the murderer was. So there was no way, there were four suspects, but there was absolutely no way I could in any way anticipate
Give it
or
out.
colour that
Yeah.
person's performance. And when the moment came, when the murderer was revealed, I was going, oh my God, I did not see that coming. Oh my God, it's him. Bloody hell. Oh my goodness, my goodness. And it was so exciting because I genuinely didn't know who it was. And I don't know whether that showed in the narration, but I had to kind of stop and go, oh, 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 good gracious. But
I love that.
it was so exciting. And I shall do that whenever I do a whodunit. I shall never read the end chapters again and just hope it doesn't. I mean, it's only all the characters were there. Um, there was
But
no,
there was
there were
no
no
and I
coming in.
I had a publisher ask me why I liked thrillers because I said, "Oh, I'm your thriller girl. I love thrillers." And he came back and he said, "Why do you like thrillers?" I don't think he expected as long of an answer as he got from me, but the thing is, he goes, they're formulaic. They but the thing is with me, thrillers, do you not find they make you feel like you're in the room with them? They have the cup of
The good ones do,
coffee.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they draw you in completely. Those are the good ones.
Mm.
And yeah, I love that idea. I love that idea,
Yeah.
not knowing
No, I
until
had no idea who it was. No idea at all. Funnily enough, there was a blog post in Audiophile magazine by a really, really well-known American narrator who hires preppers. She never reads, she never pre-reads her books at all, ever, any of them. She hires someone to do the preparation for her. So they send her notes, character notes, who's who, how old they are, who they're related to, what their accent is, and a rough outline of the story, but she never actually reads them before she
I think I'm
records.
going I am a cheapskate. I really am. Well, okay. After my new tax bill, I'm not a cheapskate. I'm just poor. So I am careful with expenses, but I have been considering hiring preppers as my one major expense.
Your luxury. Mm.
Yeah, because I think I do better with less attention ahead of time. And if
Well,
they
it's
give me
like
the
you
important
have to learn.
facts,
I think you do have to know what to let go.
yeah,
But also, I think that the big thing for me, and it's something that I really only registered with me comparatively recently, is that what most people do as preparation is completely meaningless. And I'm sorry to say that in this forum, but you have to make your preparation meaningful. And meaningful preparation is not going into a script and highlighting your characters in different colours and, doing marking pauses and things, because all you're doing then is marking up a script. You're not actually getting under the skin of the book. It's about attitudes, it's about emotion, it's about connection, it's about relationships between people, and who is this person that I am being, not whether they're highlighted in pink or blue or green. That's completely unimportant. My scripts, when I read, have not a single mark on them. I read from a totally virgin script.
Yeah.
I make notes. I have my little pad that I scribble when I'm, people's names and references, and this is, remember they've got a lisp or whatever it happens to be.
You talked me down. You know that. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but I'd had coaching with you, and then I'd been told somewhere that I wasn't prepping properly and I needed to prep. Because I tried really hard when I first started to do the prepping, and I worried the entire time in the booth, and I got distracted, and I tried really hard to me, it was like, took me right out. And I was feeling so dejected when I went to you. We'd already had a coaching session. I went back to you and I said, I think the problem is when you start, the danger with a lot of coaching is you start chasing what's wrong with me. And that's the wrong thing. And that's how I was that day. I was like, Helen, I can't. And you were like, don't. It's stupid.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying don't prep. And I'm not saying, if it works for you, mark your script up. Do it. I mean, if it
doesn't work for me though. And you gave me permission.
But the important thing is that you're not, prep is not, okay, who speaks next? Because if all you're doing is highlighting, you're not thinking. What you're thinking is, okay, this is Fred, blue, this is Jemima, pink, this is...
Pause there.
Whatever. You're not actually reading who they are, what they're saying, why they're saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't speak in a vacuum unless it's a monologue, and even then there's a purpose to the monologue. Even if it's interior thoughts, they're doing that for a reason, either to convince themselves or to, you say something. I'm talking the way I'm talking now to convince you all that I'm right. I may not be, but that's my aim, is to convince you that I know what I'm talking about. And that's why I'm talking to you the way I'm talking to you. Now, if all I'm thinking when I'm prepping is, okay, this is Zoe, this is Nikki, this is so-and-so, I'm not actually reading that text in a meaningful way. So I urge you, chuck your bloody highlighters away and just read the book.
Yeah.
Read the book and think about, once you've read it, let it sink, let it go into your subconscious mind, so that I'm walking the dog and I suddenly go, oh my goodness, this is what they sound like. I never realized this is what they sound like. And the dog's going, who is this mad woman walking me on the end of a lead? Because I've been thinking about it. It's been mulling over in my brain, or, I dream about them sometimes. I dream about the people and have sort of light bulb moments of, yeah, of course, that's who they are. That's what. And I never think about what people sound like until I actually start recording. And then suddenly their voices appear.
They exist. They exist. You're the 10-year-old girl. You're the 10-year-old girl that used to love your books. And you're bringing, and that's the joy you bring. Your poor dog, though. He must be really embarrassed.
He does get embarrassed. He does. He does. I mean, he quite often kind of looks at me and goes, please let me off the lead, Mum. I don't want to be walking with you. So I let him off the lead, and off he trots and plays with his friends. And then I'm going round the park going, 11 benevolent elephants, 11 benevolent elephants. This is my tongue twister for the day. And I'm sure that the locals will think I'm totally barking mad. Which of course
you're
I am.
in touch with the joy. That's what just the word that keeps coming back. You're unapologetically in touch with the joy of your job.
Yeah, And I am incredible. I've always had that. The first time I went to the theatre, I was 5, and I went to see Toad of Toad Hall, and Michael Hordern played Toad, I think. No, he can't have done. He must have been Badger. I don't really remember. Anyway, I know it was Michael Hordern. And I came out of that theatre and I said to my mum, that's what I'm going to do when I grow up. And I
Oh,
never, ever, ever changed from that, ever. And through, my dad said, no, you've got to go and do secretarial college. And I went, oh, okay, I'll go and do that for 2 years. So I went and learnt shorthand and typing and business law and bookkeeping and all that rubbish. But I got to drama school, and I've never deviated from that. I mean, all right, I've worked in television, and that was slightly different. But actually, what I was doing then was helping people to do what I'd learnt to do.
but that
Because
wasn't different. It's
no, so
acting.
it's not really that different. So
Yeah.
I've never varied from that, and I've always had a complete and utter passion for it. I very rarely go to the theatre now. I can't bear it. It's always so awful. Most of the stuff is so dreadful. I very rarely go to the theatre anymore.
Do you
I've
know
been
that
so
I went to a
disappointed so often.
musical? I went to a musical when I was at that corporate job, not doing what I loved. And I was like so hateful. I was so jealous. I went to the bathroom and cried through the whole second half of the show
Oh,
because
that's awful.
I wanted to do that. I thought, my life is over. I'm too old. I think I was like 30. I'm washed up. So you're a child. So when you're at secretarial school, are you like, I know I'm going to drama school?
Oh, yeah,
This is
yeah, yeah.
just,
Oh, absolutely.
you
This
never
was
wavered.
No, this was placating my parents because they wouldn't let me go they wouldn't let me go until I was 18. I left school at 16, knowing exactly what I wanted to do. There was no point me doing anything, no point me staying on at A levels. It was too thick anyway. So there was no point me doing that. Uh, you think I'm joking? I failed French O level 7 times.
I think you're probably just, what is it, left
A
brain,
late
right brain.
developer. A late developer is what I was. But anyway, there was no way that I was going to be diverted from that ever. So
Wow.
it was like taking 2 years out, going to secretarial college. I loathed every minute of it, absolutely hated it. Um, but I knew that that was the price I had to pay for my father, particularly my father, to allow me to go to drama school because, I mean, actors were second only to ladies of the night in his book. It
Yeah.
was very dodgy, and he was, he was all he was doing was looking after me really and saying, you will need a proper job, dear. You'll never last at this. You might, it just won't work.
Mine was the
And it
same, but I admire your courage. I wasted a lot more time
I
than
just
two
knew
years.
I just knew that was what I wanted to do, and it's what I always wanted to do.
But standing
And I
up
don't,
for it isn't easy.
yeah, but my mum was really good. I mean, my father was absolutely, totally, utterly, totally opposed to it. But my mum had been forced to do a job that she didn't want to do. She wasn't allowed to do the job she wanted to do when she was a young girl.
Wow.
So even though she was slightly concerned about me being an actor, she was on principle going to stick up for me because she hadn't been allowed to follow her dream.
What was your first moment that you got a part or that you thought, this is it, it's happening?
Well, my first job was probably the best job I did. I went downhill from there on. My first job was
No,
Jonathan Miller's.
Audio award winner is not downhill.
No, no, no. But I mean, as far as acting was concerned,
Okay.
certainly in terms of name dropping, my first job was at Nottingham Playhouse, which was at that time run by Stuart Burge. And one of the first productions I was in, playing, third lady in waiting from the left and understudy in Goneril, was Jonathan Miller's production of King Lear with Michael Hordern playing Lear, Frank Middlemas playing the fool, Penny Wilton playing Cordelia, or Lady Penelope Wilton as she is now. So, it was like incredibly.
Wow.
Thelma Ruby was in it. It was a very star-studded thing. And then I worked with Ian McKellen and Derek Jacobi and Peter O'Toole, and
Wow.
I made a cup of tea for Laurence Olivier, and it was sort of I was an acting ASM. It was a very junior job. But there were some really fantastic actors in that company.
Did you
And
learn from them, or did you
oh
have enough
God, yes.
contact to?
Oh God, yes. I spent
Wow.
Lear particularly. I think I spent every night in the wings watching Michael Hordern doing Lear. He was absolutely wonderful. My favourite Lear. I walked out of Paul Schofield's. I thought it was a total travesty. I hated it. But Jonathan Miller's production was wonderful.
That's what
Absolutely.
James Romick did, because he was Phantom, and he talks about watching all the other Phantoms and studying every single thing he did. And that's amazing that
I
you were
think
doing that.
the thing that Michael Hordern used to do was he was just extraordinary because he was a wonderful actor, totally unassuming, lovely, lovely man. But every night it sounded as though he was saying those lines for the very first time. And that was utterly wonderful. He didn't change. He didn't
I wonder
mess
how
anybody
he
up.
did it. How do
Well,
you
because
think
it was in you do. You do it when you're in that moment, when you are in there, because what happens on Monday night will not be exactly the same as what happens on Friday night. And if you've got a really good company and a really solid production that's been well directed, and Jonathan Miller was the most wonderful director. Oh God, he was incredible. So everybody knew every nuance, every motivation, every second, every thought change throughout the whole thing. So once you know, and it's the same with audiobooks, once you know who you are, you have the fluidity and the ability, and you can be brave. You can say, oh, well, why don't I try it this way? Why don't I go in that direction and see what happens? And if it doesn't work, you can always just go back and re-record it. But to have, once you're solid in your foundation, and this applies to all acting in every genre, if you're solid in your foundation and you know who you are. Now, in audiobooks, you're all sorts of people, but particularly the main protagonists, the main characters, if you know who you are, you don't need to know what line is coming next, because it is that second. You are there, you are in that moment, and you're not
reacting to whatever
thinking.
they're seeing
You're
and
reacting, exactly. You're not thinking about how am I going to say this line. You say it the way it comes out, in the way that you would say it as that person in that second, in that recording. If you
yeah.
record it again tomorrow, you might say it differently.
But what you just said goes back to what I said I noticed about you and what I'm trying to get. I hadn't even considered in the audiobook world, knowing who you are as the character, being solid in your foundation, but there's the other side of knowing who you are, full stop, as a
Yeah.
person,
Well,
because you
yes,
bring
because,
that person in the booth, and if you don't, it
well,
gets
that's
in the
right.
way.
And one of the saddest things about actors generally
So
is
we
that
don't.
there are so many actors that think that acting is something, gives you something to hide behind.
Yeah,
But if an actor is hiding, then I'm sorry, but they're not being true to themselves as an
yeah,
actor. They're not giving a very good performance, because you don't have to impress yourself with your acting. So, if you're going, oh God, I felt every second of it, it was just, I'm sorry, you're being self-indulgent. It's not
yeah,
about impressing yourself. It's about connecting the other people, the watchers, the listeners, the audience, and bringing them to you. So
yeah.
you don't, and this is where technique comes in. Yes, and that's one of the problems. If you're a big softy, I cried at Dumbo buckets,
I
and
couldn't
that,
watch it
and I
because
still
I
do.
knew they were going to try to like upset
Exactly.
me.
I'm such a softie. I mean, I see a bride coming out of a church, somebody I've never met before. I'm going, oh God, it's so beautiful. Oh, dear. A baby, a brand new baby, and I'm sobbing my heart out. I'm such a softie. So audio, they're quite often, an alien will die. A baby alien will die, and I'm sobbing my socks off as I'm narrating. So that's slightly different than being, you just kind of have to stop. And pause and draw breath. But if you're not, I can't explain it other than to say, what is it? Sanford Meisner says that acting is behaving truthfully in extraordinary circumstances.
Yes, yes, I love that. And
And
also
that's
getting rid
what
of your junk when you go
that's
in the
right.
booth.
That is what we are all doing, is we are
Yeah.
giving an impression of truth. We're not being truthful. That's why the word authentic should be removed from the dictionary for audiobooks. How can you be authentic when you're doing something utterly artificial? You can't. It's always got to be truth in terms of theatre or in terms of the performance. You know, I grew up, by the time I was 5, I was bilingual. So I talked about the way I talk. I had mummy and daddy at home, and me mum and me dad, and get out and get off on when I was at school, because that was how all the other kids talked. So I
Wait, what
didn't want to be.
language was that?
That's East Midlands dialect, dear. That's Nottingham. That's yeah. So I talk, you know, if I'm talking with my mates, I talk like this because that's the way they talk. That's the way I talk when I'm with them. So I'm on the park talking with my mates, and I'm talking like this. It's D.H. Lawrence language, and that's how I talked from the age of 5 with people that I went to school with. Now,
Wow.
and I was born in Wales, so my first language was Welsh. So which of those is the authentic me?
Ah.
I have no idea. This, I think, is the authentic me, because this is the me that I've been for longer than any of the others.
But you're multifaceted. But when I think authentic, multi, oh God, you can always tell you're a narrator when you say you're trying to have a conversation. You're like, is it multi or multi?
Multi.
But I think that to me, what authenticity means, which I think you've achieved, which I haven't, and I'm working on, is acknowledging all the 80 million different personalities and people and hats you wear and different, but the stuff that's layered on top of that 10-year-old kid or 8 or 5, the stories we tell ourselves about the way things have to be and who we are, and I think we need to shed a lot of that.
Yeah, but I think the trouble is that and you see it. I see it all the time. What is your authentic voice? Well, your authentic voice is what you need it to be at that particular time, because it's the person you're being. It's got nothing to do with you at all. It is
Okay,
who
we
that
have a
person is.
question. Nancy Bober says, what do you sound like when you stub your toe? Does the Welsh come out?
Only in Wales. Only when I'm in Wales. I swear, just like everybody else, I swear quite poshly generally. I do quite posh swearing. But in Wales, I would do it like that, see, because when I'm there for 5 minutes, and then that's it. I go into it, and I can't help it.
My friend's
Because
from
that's
Swansea. It's
the
the
way everybody does.
hardest accent.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm a North Walian. I'm a Gog.
Ah, it's a beautiful accent, though. Very nice.
I don't think North Walian is particularly. It's like a cross between Liverpool and
Oh, to
it's
Americans it
nasal. They
is.
talk like that. And Bangla, they talk like that, don't they? It's
As
all
an
appeals
American,
to
you
the
guys are all so adorable.
yeah, if I stub my toe, does the Welsh come out? Yeah, I think the posh comes out. I'm less posh than I used to be. In the 80s, I sounded rather like the Queen. It was all very, very sort of terribly, terribly posh. But then everybody talked terribly, terribly posh.
And is that
Certainly,
RP? Is that
that's
RP?
heightened. It's what I would call heightened RP. I think what I do now is probably the trouble is there are degrees of RP. There's heightened RP, which is really. It's slightly sort of it's not quite as grand as that, but it's a bit too posh. It's certainly too posh for modern books. It works quite well for period books, but for modern writing, it's too much, because you would have every consonant quite clipped, so they wouldn't run one from the other.
I always want to just move Helen into my house so that you can just direct me for every book I do.
Oh.
Just have you stand by me while I narrate. I've got to tell you guys, and people ask me all the time, and I do have to say, the best thing ever if you're doing a demo or something was doing my demos and having you listen and direct me was amazing. It was just amazing.
I think, in fairness, I don't think that's having me listen. I think it's having somebody listen. I think I think it's really, really hard to make decisions about your own, what you sound like and what you should sound like.
Yeah, saying that because Johnny
In
Heller was wonderful as well. You need a
exactly.
voice
And
of,
I mean, yes, and I love directing. I love directing, because it's so great to dig. I think there's two ways of thinking about it. I always think of onions, and you take a layer off, but then there's always another layer underneath, and another layer, and another layer, and another layer. And it's finding those layers that I like very much. I really enjoy doing that. And people very often, if you're in a hurry and if you've got time pressure and a deadline, you maybe only go down 2 layers, but there's another 7, 8, 9 to go beneath. And having somebody else work with you enables you to, it gives you a shortcut through those layers. And
and it
that's all a
challenges our
director.
belief about what we can do, because
Yeah,
you're a
yeah.
little afraid when you're going to have somebody direct you that they're going to like like you're doing it wrong.
It's great. I mean, I've done 6 books with a director. Um, 4 have been in a studio, and 2 have been remotely directed recently down the line. One of which was Penguins, and I thought I'd hate it because I'm a bit of a control freak, and I kind of know what I like to do and how I like to work. But actually, once I moved my keypad away because my left hand kept trying to stop and do punch and roll,
Yeah.
they said, no, we want open record. So I took my keypad out of the way. And I spent a long time talking to the directors beforehand so that we knew that we were working, that we had similar kind of thoughts and feelings about it. And it was absolutely wonderful. It was a really, really lovely experience. Really enjoyed it. Hard work
I started
because
with
you're doing
directors in studio.
7 hours of recording a day at least.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
long,
hard. How
yeah.
do you do that? Because I started in studios and that's how we did it. It was directed. It was 4 hours, you take a break, and then you go back in until
Mm,
the evening.
mm.
But is that not really hard to do from your home studio? I've not
No,
managed that amount from my home studio.
no. My record when I'm working solo without a director is 3.5 hours of finished audio a day.
Yeah, and that hurts.
It's hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard. Um, but with the director, I it's not. I don't find it difficult as long as there are regular breaks. We sort of broke every hour and a
Yeah.
half, just for a drink and a shakeout and all the rest of it. But actually, I was going, no, no, let's get another one done. I'm into this. I want to keep going. I want to keep going. I want to keep going. My problem is working first thing in the morning because because I'm a theatre bird, really. I come alive at night. So, I mean, I quite often work till 2, 3 in the morning, because that's when I work best, I think. I'm relaxed then, and it all seems to flow. In the morning, I tend to be much more not concerned about it, but I know that I sound snotty and kind of, gravelly in the mornings a bit. So it's always a bit more effort in the morning.
I think we all have rhythms, and you
Yeah,
and
my rhythm is definitely I would far rather work in the evening.
yeah, because I think
Quite often
Rachel
when
used to wake up at like 6 a.m.
yeah.
I can't, I just,
Oh, I
and
do
also
that too. I do that too.
I can't. I can't. I'm
I'll
not
do
even a nice person until 10.
because that allows me to have my days, or part of my days at least, with my. If I know I've got to do a 7 hour day,
Yeah.
that would mean that I would not see my husband from the time he gets up in the morning till the time he goes to bed at night. He gets up after me, he goes to bed before me. So I wouldn't see him at all. So the only way I can jiggle that is I quite often start, he'll definitely have gone to bed now. So
Hmm.
I would quite happily start recording now and work till 2 or 3 in the morning. He's gone to bed, I will then go to bed. I then wake up at 7 because that's when I wake up, no matter what time I go to bed. And I'll
Wait,
take yeah,
2 or 3,
always.
you don't sleep.
No, well, no, I'll sleep in the afternoon. So what I then
Oh,
do, if I wake up at 7, which I normally do, I'll take the dog for a walk, then I'll come in here and do another 2 or 3 hours. Then I'll cook the lunch, and then I'll have an hour's sleep on the sofa in the afternoon. Then I'll spend the afternoon with him. We'll do whatever we're doing. You know, we quite often sit in the office and we'll both be typing on our computers, and that's fine.
Oh,
Then I'll take the dog for another walk. Then I'll cook the dinner. Then he'll go to bed and I'll start again. So my day's really weird. That's the only thing about working with a director, because they tend not to like to work like that. They tend to want to work 9 to 5. But on the first occasion, it was an American director, so that suited me. So we did afternoon and evening. When it was the British director, it was slightly more difficult because they wanted to work morning and afternoon.
I love
So
that about living over here, because do you not find I'm always really early for my deadlines? Meantime, I'm
yes,
like up at
yeah.
12
But your
midnight.
pickups, when you get the pickups back, it works the other way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. Why is it? I don't know. Every single time I have a conversation with you, Helen, I walk away feeling like I've got this. Everything's fine. You just have like this effect on people, which is surprising since I was terrified of you for the first like
You can't be terrified of me. It
because
was
of B audio. I did the B audio course, and basically it's a compliment because it's so good. It tells you the truth, and it's intimidating, and you're the messenger.
yes. It's a shame they don't do it anymore. But they gave it to me, so it still exists in a slightly different form.
It was amazing. It was the best ground foundation I could have possibly asked for. All the things that are scary, the tech things and everything.
I think the thing is at the time that they did it, they needed a quick. They just moved to the UK or opened up in the UK, and they needed 50 narrators, pretty PDQ. And they couldn't find them, and they couldn't find ones. They also needed 50 narrators who could work remotely. So in other words, had their own studios, and they just didn't, because that's not the British model. Most British narrators still don't have their own studio.
Yeah.
There are comparatively few who were working independently. Um, so they needed people to step up, and the best way to do that was to do that audio book certification, studio certification course, because really that was the only way to get people able to deliver audio of the quality that they needed.
And you offer it though as part of your coaching. It's the same course,
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
the same course. Well, it's not quite the same course. The reason that B had to drop it was because there was more and more people demanding different software options. So we offered Adobe Audition, SoundForge, Studio, and Studio One for either Mac or PC. Those were between the audio engineer who did it with me and I. That was all the software that we had. Oh, an Isotope RX. But people were coming on saying, well, can you do it for, can you, because it had screenshots of settings and all the rest of it. Can you do it for Reaper? Can you do it for Pro Tools? Can you do it for this, that, the
Yeah,
next
I
thing?
was a Pro Tools
And it
person.
meant that B would have had to, A, invest in the software and pay somebody to train us to use it so that we could do it. And they weren't prepared to do that. So that was why they dropped it. So because I'd written the course and it was all my material,
Did
it
you
was
write
my idea.
that?
Yeah, I wrote it all. It was my idea in the first place. So it was
Wow.
my baby. So I
Yeah.
wrote all the coursework. So they said to me very kindly when they stopped doing it that I could have it back. So they gave me all the coursework back, and I sat on it for about 3 years. And then people started saying, can we still do this course? But I couldn't do the audio engineering bit in quite the same way. So it's now the technical information is slightly more generic. It still covers everything like punch and roll and how to use EQ and when to put a high pass filter on and all that sort of stuff. But it's doing it in a much more general way without giving individual screenshots of the different software. So narrators have to kind of find their own way to achieve what they need to achieve in their own
Right.
software. But essentially, it's the same course, although it's now even bigger and better because I'm still working with an audio engineer, but I'm also now working with a voice coach. So there's people get voice exercises and voice coaching modules as well as um, the course as it was, so it's grown. It's a bit like Topsy. It gets
That
bigger
was
every
the one that I can't remember her name. She did accents as well, right?
Anita Gilbert.
Anita, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm working with Anita. So she's sort of on board as a co-coach, really. So she
Okay.
does she does a kind of a module with people where she'll listen to their audio and then give them one-to-one specific exercises and a series of directions for their particular vocal thing. And she also has made a series of videos that we share.
And do you still do director sessions for somebody that wants to do a demo or an audition?
Anybody who's got an audition, or I will also direct. What I've started to do now for people is directing the first 2 or 3 chapters of a book, so that it just gets people started on the right track.
Yeah.
You know, if they're not sure where to go, so I'll do director sessions for auditions, for submissions, for samples on people's websites, and also if you've got a book that you're struggling with, I'll do the first chapter or the first couple of chapters or the first 10 minutes or whatever.
I don't know if I told you I got that book that you helped me with.
Oh, did you? Oh, well
Yeah.
done.
Ages ago done. So thank you very much.
Oh, good for you.
Okay.
Good for you.
We've got people backing out. They're all wishing you good luck on your award, your upcoming award, your nomination. And we will all be crossing our fingers for you.
Questions?
They don't so much. I have a horrible feeling that I talk so much, so people have given up.
Well, you and me could keep going for England, couldn't we?
But it's not just you, because I haven't had a lot of questions for like the last 2 months. We've been doing 2 calls a week. But yes, I will start to did anyone have any questions that you didn't feel you had time to ask? I tell myself, my ego, that I'm just covering all bases, so nobody has any questions. But I kind of suspect it might be that I don't give them a chance.
Yeah. I mean, but also I think, I recognize so many faces here, and so many names that I think when the questions tend to come in, it tends to be people who are, who haven't kind of been part of the community for very long. And I recognise so many people here that I know most of these people are part of the community. And also because you're doing Cup of Joe twice a week, where the hell do you find time to narrate?
I do the Cup of Joe till midnight every night, and I narrate during the day.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so we're getting there. On that note, the video might take a few days to come out.
And everybody, if you're planning to, or if you've got the time, watch Stephen's thing on Thursday, because he's a lovely, lovely man.
Isn't
and
he?
He's an absolute poppet. And it'll be really useful.
I know Anna and I were saying Stephen and Helen in 1 week. That's like a win.
Hello, Anna. You've gone off vision, but I can see your little name down there. Hello, Anna. And hello, little Siobhan. I can see you too. Here's Anna. She's waving at me. You've got your dressing gown on, dear.
Everyone's saying thank you. And Harry said he's taken tons of notes.
Good. Thank you, Harry.
And everyone wants to congratulate you on your nomination.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm still buzzing. I'm sort of, I can't believe it.
It's very exciting. We're all going to be there cheering you on.
It's so disappointing that I don't know whether I'm going to be able to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning to see who wins. I don't think that's the only problem.
You kind of have to. You can't miss your own award ceremony. I mean, I'm not saying wear a cocktail dress and hold a martini, but that would be ideal.
No, I shan't be wearing a cocktail dress at 2 o'clock in the morning.
You kind of should stay awake, or at least set the alarm and wake up.
I don't think I can. I don't think I could bear it. I think I'll be so twitchy.
I know, but that's the excitement.
Just drinking half a bottle of wine or a whole bottle of wine and going to bed.
I know you probably end up with a hangover for like 3 weeks after, but yeah, I don't know. I'd be up. I don't know if I could sleep. I couldn't even sleep during the election. There's no way if I was up for an award I could be sleeping.
Up for many an election night. But that's different because you can shout and scream at the television, and I don't think I could sit and shout. wouldn't be
I don't
fair.
know. You should shout and scream if you win the award.
Oh, yeah. Not. Listen, all I wanted, my wish list was to be nominated. My wish list. I am realistic.
But
There are
the
some
thing is, I'm the
fantastic books
same.
on there.
I used to love, like, it's like a date. You get really dressed up, you get really excited. It could be the love of your life. You go out with them, and of course, within a half hour, you know it's not the love of your life, and you're pretty much sure you're not going to have a second date. But my favorite part was the part between being asked and going out.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah, I'm with you on
excitement is
that.
the best part of anything.
Yeah.
Milk it
After
for
40, when you've
everything.
been married for 40 years, you know that getting ready
Yes.
for it is the best part of it. Because, that's not fair and it's not true. But yeah,
No, the
yeah.
excitement
So
every second.
lovely to see everybody. It's just so nice. And I've really enjoyed it again. Thank you, Daniela.
It's wonderful to have you. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Helen.
one thing I must
Yes.
say to people, if you and it's just cropped up. I saw a Guardian article the other day. If any of you are using this new thing that everybody's going on about, the chat thing that's only available on iPhones, what's it called? Not Discord, the other one.
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse. Be careful.
Yeah.
Please be careful. It's really, really scary. I read an article about it and it scared the shit out of me. You would not get me anywhere near it. It's terrifying. They're pulling information. It's all run by the bloody Chinese. And do you really want to be giving all your private details? Because once you're invited and you accept the invitation, it accesses your address list. You have no way of stopping it. And if you try to stop it, they won't let you join it. So be really, really careful of it. Scares the life out of me.
Yeah, I'm an Android girl, so
Well, so am I. But even if I wasn't, I wouldn't. There's a really good Guardian article about it, and I find it absolutely terrifying that they are literally harvesting
yeah.
information
There's a
from people.
backstory. There's a backstory to, to all that. That's funny. That's very ironic that you brought that up. I'll tell you later.
Oh, is there? Okay.
I forgot. Last word for people on YouTube. Last sentence, word of wisdom for people on YouTube that are going to see this in 30 years.
Keep watching Cup of Joe because it's the best narrator.
My favorite last words ever.
It's great. I never miss it. I mean, I may not watch it at the time, but I do blitz watching. So I've got nothing to do on a Sunday, and I'll watch all the Cup of Joes and catch up. And I think it's really, 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 really good.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Harry. Best comment ever. You guys, we better wrap it up. I hope you have a wonderful evening. You all look gorgeous. Helen, cocktail dress, martini, stay up on the night. Congratulations. We're all holding our breath for you.
It's been lovely to talk to you all. Bye.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Bye.